Yoan, thank you for taking the time here. I was very keen to create an episode with you because you've been a Twitch streamer, you're a professional esports pro, and more and more people from the esports area transition to poker. Or I also have one or two getting in touch with me and being very curious about mindset and high performance and everything. So I thought you're the perfect guest. For those who don't know you, can you introduce yourself quickly?
My name is Yoan Merlo. I come from France, and in the past, I was a Warcraft 3 pro gamer and then StarCraft 2 pro gamer. And now I'm a poker enthusiast. I play recreationally, like for fun, but I kind of like take it seriously. It's like a serious hobby. And I live in Vienna. I moved there 2 years ago, and I'm 39.
The most important thing is that you don't play professional as a poker player, but you have a very strong esports background. And I would like to start with this before we talk about poker and mindset and so on, because of course I always do research on my guests. And I saw you lived in South Korea, you lived in China, you lived in Germany, and now in Vienna, as you just said. And you started moving countries when you were 18 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was pretty young, but very passionate about video games. And obviously, I think almost everyone in that situation, their parents would disapprove. But fortunately for me, they didn't really get a say. I just did whatever I wanted. So yeah.
When I was reading this, I was very interested on how this impacted your mindset because when you're 18 years old, you have your friends, you have your comfort zone, your parents and everything, and then you basically go to a completely different culture, completely different country. How did you manage this? Also in terms of mindset, just growing up as well with changing countries and everything.
I think I was just always passionate about what I did, whether it was like sports in school, somewhat competitive, but then I think it kind of like ramped up over time. Like the more sports or video games I tried, the more I was like, I really want to be good at like one of them one day. And then eventually when I played Warcraft 3, I was like, okay, well, this is like the game for me. And then I really wanted to excel, so I really dedicated all I had to it. I was like really obsessed with it, and it wasn't an easy journey. It's not like I had success right off the bat. Like it was crazy days because back then there was offline tournaments. I'm living in the south of France, and then like tournaments they are mostly in Paris. So I'm like taking the train with my big PC tower and like renting a monitor and like thinking back on it, it's just insane. Like just I would travel with a big luggage plus my computer tower, go there, play for like a whole weekend to hope and win like a graphic card or something. It's like ridiculous. But yeah, the passion was there. I wanted to compete and I improved a lot. I think also mishaps initially. First of all, I was like very nervous. It took me a long time to finally overcome that. And then now I'm at the point where like I've played in front of like stadiums, filled with people. So I don't care anymore about anything. I could easily like do most things without being nervous ever. But back then, I had a lot of stage fright when I was playing in tournaments. So it made me massively underperform. And also, I made a lot of like really stupid decisions. Like gear-wise, back then there is almost nothing like brands like you have today. So I bought like a keyboard and mouse which were wireless. Now we're talking early 2000s, so it's complete garbage. You have like 2 seconds delay. Like in retrospect, it's like what was I thinking? Like how did I realize this was the worst? So yeah, like a lot of missteps along the way, but eventually did get competitive.
If I take a look at what I was reading about you, I always think about the clients that I work with, and I also work with very young poker players who live in a country which has a very bad law when it comes to taxes about poker. So then let's say they're also 18, 19, 20 years old, and then they ask me, should I move countries? And it's always a very tricky question because there's so much that you have to think of. And new culture, how do you like this country? How was it for you? And what do you think changed in yourself by just seeing those cultures and different countries, different time zones as well, right? Because your parents also lived in a completely different time zone then. So how did you cope with all those things?
I think for me, I was just ready to just go for it. And I'm not sure how comparable it is to someone thinking about investing themselves a lot in poker because there's a lot less risk, obviously. If you play video games, you're not going to bust your roll and end up like, being down money or something like that. So obviously, like there is a risk, I go across the world. I'm not studying anymore. I'm just kind of going all in on gaming from like a very young age. Yeah, I was just so passionate about it. I decided like I didn't want to have this regret that, maybe I wouldn't do it. So I decided to just go for it. And I feel like maybe that can be like one of the important things for people to think about is whether they really want to give it a shot. And it's a little bit, I guess, like There are similarities with me right now because although I do play recreationally, I still take poker seriously. And one of the reasons I moved to Austria is because I wanted to play more poker and also like try and improve. And I really give it a shot, but I don't know that I have the guts to quite go for it 100%. And also I still really enjoy gaming. I think like for the rest of my life, even when I'm 70, I'm probably going to be playing a lot of video games. So I might as well, have it as my job. So it's still my main thing.
When did you start playing poker then? And also, how does the competitive mindset that you learned in esports and maybe also the pressure on performing and being consistent with always having high performance, always being focused, maybe even for multiple hours or multiple days, how do you compare those two sports and what's the difference for you?
I think competition in video games is like there is similarities with just traditional sports. Obviously, it's a lot less physical, but aside from that, almost everything is like completely identical. Is you enjoy the game, so you play a lot, you practice, you put in the repetitions, you get better, you figure out ways to get better, and then you go and compete and you try to have a good performance. I think that's something that everybody kind of has to figure out for themselves. Although nowadays there is like more coaching available and things like that, which definitely can help for certain people. And sometimes it feels like it's a little bit of lightning in a bottle for people to make it happen. Like on their own, it's just very hard to really figure out everything because everybody has their own path and their own way to be able to, unlock the next step and like really be able to fulfill their full potential. If we were to talk about nutrition, for example, it's like most people kind of know how nutrition works, like a caloric deficit, like what it is you have to eat to be healthy. But then at the end of the day, it's a lot about life balance and are you able to dedicate enough to do what you need to do to get there. And there's probably similarities in poker with that, where like most people, they know they have to study a fair amount, but then it's like not many people do that enough. And even if you do, you need to like study in the correct way, have some sort of life balance. All of those things I would guess are like very important. In gaming, it's similar, although in gaming, you probably can be like a lot more of a degen. There's like some gamers, I was like that at some points. You just play 16 hours a day, you care about absolutely nothing, and then you just like make the video game your life, and then you show up at the event and, hope for the best. But in retrospect, I do think that we all know, like, working out will help your mind and stuff, and you will feel less tired. Like those things are true. And like, it's things that I've neglected my whole life when I was a pro player, and still to this day, I very rarely work out. Like I'm a very honest person, so I'll admit that. And back in the day, when I was competing in Warcraft 3, I had a lot of finals, podium, fourth, eighth. And then I look at the end of the tournament, I'm like, every time I was underperforming at the end. And, in retrospect, maybe I would have had a little bit less practice if I would have, been working out or been having a better life hygiene. But maybe even though I would have had less practice, I would have still been performing closer to my best.
What are the differences then? Now we talked about the similarities. What about the differences?
Between gaming and poker?
Yes.
I think the main difference is like the money, obviously. I mentioned that in gaming, you can't just play like 16 hours and, that's it. Like there's no real downside. Like maybe you'll have a couple of bad games. Like so what? It doesn't really matter. In poker, you can't really have bad games. Like yes, you can play 16 hours, but then you will not be on your A game for a long time. And that's something that's still to this day very hard for me to take in consideration just because I'm so used of just grinding. I would say I'm someone that doesn't learn very quickly. But once I learn something, it's learned. Like my execution will always be there, and then I will always be disciplined with it. So there is, pros and cons to what I'm capable of doing. And the discipline part of not playing too long sessions is still something I'm struggling with because I get baited by leaderboards and stuff like that. And yeah, I either playing too long or like sometimes I have a long day where like I'm going about my day. I stream in the evening and then I finish my stream and I get this craving that I need to play some poker. And it's late, like it's almost time for bed and I'm just like, I shouldn't do it. But then it's like you end up playing a little bit longer than you should have. Then it's really hard to sleep. All the hands are coming all at once to me in my mind. The example that I gave with nutrition is I feel it fits almost everything else because it's like most people, including myself, we know what we have to do. Like we know like I should turn off the screen 30 minutes before bed, go to bed, put on a lamp and read a book. But when do I ever do this? 0 days out of the year, probably.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting what you said. I think that's something that is very common that people have this craving of playing poker, even though it's super late at night and maybe even they're tired or, someone who has a full-time job and then he basically comes home and he's tired and maybe he has a family and everything, but he's still like this, I want to play poker. And That's very, very interesting because I always say to my clients, the biggest benefit of being a professional poker player is you can literally earn money 24/7. So no matter where you are in this world, there are games running either live or online. If you really want to play poker, you find a website or a casino where you can play. Yeah, no matter which time of the day it is. So that's an amazing thing, but it's at the same time the biggest downside because you can play when you want. So if you're tired, you have this fear of missing out in a way of like, if I don't play, maybe there are, some good games running and I miss them. So you really want to be careful and you want to plan a little bit upfront. That's what I teach my clients. You want to plan a little bit upfront of when you want to play, and you want to be very strict with this. This is what comes down to discipline at the end of the day. As you said with the nutrition and the workout example, it's all about discipline. So if I have a workout plan on Monday and I don't do it, not good. If I cannot put in the time on Tuesday, then basically I failed. And I think it's upward spiral when you build a habit like this, or downward spiral. So for example, let's say you have a plan, a workout on Monday planned, and you do it on Monday, even though you're just not motivated and you just do it instead of 60 minutes, just for 30 minutes, it's much better than to skip it completely because you start to have this upward spiral. You do it on Monday just for 30 minutes, the next workout is planned on Wednesday as an example, and even though you're not motivated Wednesday either, but you still do it just for 30 minutes, and then you have like 2 times a check mark instead of 2 times an X. And then the next thing you know, maybe the next workout is on Friday, and then you do a full 60-minute session, and you see how easy it will become over time. It's the same muscle, right? The prefrontal cortex in the front. So it's the same if I can go to the gym and work out, or is it the same if I want to play a session but I control myself, or is it the same if I go to bed, or whatever it is. I think especially if you're self-employed, no matter if in esports, pro or a professional poker player, discipline is one of the key elements for everyone who just wants to be self-employed, basically. Let's come back to you as a streamer, because that was something that was really impressive for me. You have over 70,000 followers on Twitch, which is absolutely crazy. 70,000 people follow you. And I also have a lot of clients of mine who either already stream or they want to become a streamer. So for me, one of the key questions here would be, how did you build that big of a community, and what were some key things that you learned along the way?
I would say, first of all, I'm not the biggest streamer or anything. Like, obviously, it's decent numbers, but it's like very specific because a lot of them followed when I was doing StarCraft and I switched to Warcraft. So it's a little bit split audience. But what I understand about streaming is that a lot of people want to do it. And it's very competitive nowadays. I mean, depending on the game that you pick, like, yes, you could pick one of the most popular games and, somewhat get by. You kind of need to find a way to distinguish yourself from other streamers, which fortunately for me, I had basically nothing to do to achieve that, because in Warcraft 3, I was like one of the best players in the world once upon a time. And anybody that followed the game, like, pretty much, a lot of the time, I guess, will know who I was then. So basically, I had that from the start. And in StarCraft 2 also, I was a pro player and I commentated tournaments. So I was, somewhat well known. So it came easily for me. But I do think that there is good examples out there to follow. If you look at those guys that have the most viewers currently on Twitch, like that they are doing like IRL streams or like variety and stuff, they are innovating a lot. And they're always organizing stuff, subathons. Kai Cenat, he has like stars that he's inviting all the time on his stream, and he just breaks records all the time. He just broke the sub record again. So all these guys, they are very, very creative. Back in the day, I think Dr. Disrespect also was one of the guys where he was very innovative with the production things that he was doing. He'd be driving a car in the video game, and then he would switch to an overlay or a scene where he's in a car, and then you just see him like this, and it looks like he's driving. It's like, stuff like that is genius, And then he had like the whole persona thing with the mustache and wig and stuff, and like kind of exaggerated arrogance. I mean, I'd like to think so. Unfortunately, he's not doing as well nowadays, but I feel like some of those things, they should be pretty inspiring to people. It's the same as, I guess, if you think about YouTube content creation and you look at the top guys, Beast, or even in gaming, what's his name, the Swedish guy. If you look at their videos, it's like the blueprint of what to do to be successful. And then I guess the shortest way to try and emulate their success is to copy them and then add your own touch into it. So I would say, like, yeah, for streaming, it really depends what you want to stream. If you're going to stream poker, then you kind of need to look at the landscape and be like, okay, well, these guys are doing MTTs, these guys are doing cash. They already have like they're renowned and they have their following. How do I distinguish myself from that? The first thing that will be the most important is consistency. And this is why I think my stream is also, these days, is like on and off, because I'm not super consistent. Like right now, I'm doing a bunch of work around poker, like commentating a world championship of cash games. So I haven't been streaming for like a week. You really want to stream like a fair amount, many days in the week for decent hours. It's like very hard to just stream like 1, 2 hours, a day and then build a decent following. So you need to understand you're going to have to put in the hours. Maybe at first you'll have 0 viewers, then maybe 1, then 5, and maybe 100. Technically, even with 100 viewers, you can make a living from streaming. But you need to understand at first it's going to be very modest, and you need to be very passionate about it to really like pursue that and try to find a way to make it successful.
If someone starts from zero, absolute zero, he says, today I decide I want to become a streamer, what would be 3 to 5 biggest tips that you would give him?
I would say make sure you're consistent and then try to bring the most quality that you can with what you have. You don't need to have a 5,000 euro setup. Like you can have like a regular webcam. It will be 1080p anyway. Ideally, you should have good internet so you can stream with the maximum bitrate that's allowed, which is 6,000. I have a decent microphone, although I don't know if you've ever watched some of those League of Legends streamers that are very big. Like one of them is Tyler One. It's almost like it must be on purpose because he's using a headset and his microphone quality is garbage. And he just yells into it all the time. And he just like saturates the sound. And it's almost like part of the charm. But obviously it's like very niche, right? Like not everybody could do this. But yeah, try to have like good sound quality and be interactive with the chat. Just show up every day, put in the hours, and try to build a following like that. Try to collab, like some people, they do this, they have good content, but then, nobody ever sees it. So it's like collab with other streamers, try to build up your audience from that, keep grinding, keep at it, and you might be able to make something happen. Like I said, like somebody might have a good stream that nobody knows about. So then that would be what you have to focus on. So you kind of need to find what it is you need to improve all the time to maybe grow your audience. If we had to compare that with like the movies, recently, I go to movies a lot, like all the time. I watch almost everything. There's been a lot of bad movies recently, which were meant to be blockbusters, especially superhero movies. They have like 200 million budgets. They spend like probably half that on advertising, and then you go and watch it, and it was like completely garbage. The winner of Palme d'Or, Anora, I don't know if you've seen that movie. I went to watch that recently. That movie blew my mind. And it's like, I don't know, like a tenth of the budget, probably okay, maybe even less. And there is literally zero advertising for that movie. And it won Palme d'Or, the Festival de Cannes. And it's like, I watched it recently. Honestly, go watch it. I thought it was amazing. I really, really liked it.
That's a good point. Then let's take it from another perspective. Let's say someone is already a streamer. Maybe he built a following and now he wants to be full-time. He says, okay, I see it works. I see people like me. I just want to make as much out of it as a side income. He's a good poker player. He just wants to stream full-time. What do you do, or what would you recommend someone to stay motivated and to put in the consistency and the effort? Because I think that's the thing where most people struggle to show up every day, because you will have days where you really look forward to stream and you're like, yeah, finally I can do it. And then you will have days where you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh man, like today I have to stream. Yeah, I don't want to do it. So how did you deal with those days? And what would you recommend someone who struggles with the same?
Ideally, you should be happy to stream, right? Because some people have it way harder, right? It's like people that work like long hours, that, work construction, exhausting jobs like this, like these guys. I feel that the ones that are probably entitled sometimes to feel like they don't want to work. But if you're streaming, you're living the pretty good life. One thing about me is that like I try to be very grateful for what I have. And then, like I got a roof over my head, I got a bed, hot water, food. I don't need, to go crazy and like have a Ferrari or a yacht already. Like I'm grateful every single day for anything that I have. And I feel like in terms of streaming, that's one of the things. And, I'm not the most positive person on stream because I'm very outspoken. So obviously like some people, if some troll come in the chat, I will obviously like blast at them. And so sometimes it sparks arguments. And then some of these guys will bring up that they think that, for example, I don't make much money. And I'm like, what is it to you? What is it to you that maybe I don't make much money? I'm living a pretty good life. I'm happy with it. It really depends from, I guess, what point of view you're looking at it. But I feel like if you're streaming, whether as a side income or a full-time job, you should already be pretty enthusiastic about it. And yes, of course, there's going to be some days like you don't sleep so well, you're not as motivated, but then remind yourself that you have the opportunity. Like some people are living on this planet, they don't even have food or water or internet. Like you have all of this. If you want to skip a day or so, like don't torture yourself. That's something I'm sometimes guilty of and like bad about. Like I will get like, anxiety and be like, oh, I should be streaming more or something like that. But nowadays I'm trying to learn to be better with this. If you ask most people what life is about, I'm not sure what they would say, but I would say like for me, it's happiness. And then by what means. And I feel like you can apply that to everything. It's balance. It's balance in everything, like balance in your lifestyle, your life hygiene, everything that you do. And it's hard to find and execute well, personally for me. But if you can get close, to like the at least the baseline, I feel like you've already done like a lot of the work, and that will help a lot. But yeah, if I look at my balance on like a lot of things, nutrition, I'm like not doing that great. I definitely like don't eat the healthiest. Exercise, definitely way off. But I'm not the most out of shape either. But many things like being grateful and taking my job seriously and like working hard and my passion for video games and poker, I'm definitely like doing very well for that.
You just mentioned one point that also happened to me and one of my clients. So I was working with a professional poker player from Australia, and he said, "Yeah, I love streaming. I love to inspire people. I want to build a community. I want to become a streamer." So he became a streamer, and I think 2, 3, 4 weeks later, he's like, "Yeah, Karim, so streaming is a little bit hard because first of all, when I just play poker on my own, I don't need to have to interact with the chat, which is quite obvious. But then if I see bad comments in the chat, for example, you play bad, or, I don't know, some trolls, as you said, yeah, people who are just negative. Some people deal better with this and some people deal worse with it. And I understand this because if you stream for multiple hours and maybe have like, I don't know, a spot where you're unsure, or you make a misplay, you make a mistake, a lot of people, they're hard on themselves already when they make a mistake, like, I know it was a mistake, how can I do it? And if then you have 3, 4 people like, oh, you're such a bad poker player, how can you play like this? You should be ashamed. How do you deal with those people with negativity and bad comments in the chat, for example?
I feel like it's for every streamer to kind of think on it and decide for themselves whether they want to fully ignore. Like if you want to be the most popular possible, like the blueprint for this is basically you fully ignore it. So either you don't read the chat as much, but usually that's reserved for like the already very popular streamer that obviously can't keep up with it. But I feel like even the ones that read it, they're very good at just letting everything go by them. They just don't care. Because sometimes, let's say like a Genie, for example, she's like a IRL streamer. She travels the world. She has thousands, maybe 6,000 viewers at some point. And sometimes she reads the chat. And for sure, there's a couple abusive people in there, like writing, very dirty stuff. She will never react to that. She will never even say like ban this guy. So she'll just focus on the positives. But then obviously not everybody is like some sort of like monk or someone that can bypass all of that. So then if you're incapable of doing that, or also if you think that's not the way you want to deal with it, there is still many alternatives. You could build a moderation team that then does this for you. You can actually ban words in your chat, almost any words. And so you put that in options, and then anytime somebody writes that, like if there is a word that irritates you, you just ban it. So if somebody's trying to start a beef between you and another streamer, you ban that word, and then suddenly they can't write that word anymore. So there is many ways. And then if you feel like you just prefer to react and tell people to go screw themselves, then you can also do that. So it's really like for everyone to decide, but then you need to understand and accept that it might affect your popularity. Like for me, I understand that if I would ignore, some of these comments, probably I'd do better, like viewership wise or something. But then I'm not willing to let some people get away with some of the stuff that they say sometimes. So it's like I have to live with it. I've made my choice, and then you deal with the consequences after that.
I like the answer. I really like it. What I said to my clients is, especially when you play poker or even in esports, it's very isolated a lot of times. A lot of times you're just at home and you play video games or you play poker. So you're in your comfort zone. No one is seeing you, no one is watching you. And a lot of times what is missing is this thick skin that we need, right? I always talk about this thick skin, because if you're always on your own, you never get negative feedback. Even let's say it's a constructive and good feedback, but it's just in harsh words.
Yeah.
If I say to someone, hey man, I know that you're a great poker player, but you really fucked up that tournament, that's a hard way of saying it, but it might be true. Yeah. So some people can deal better with it and some people can deal worse with it. So the most important thing is that you have this thick skin and that you understand that if you really want to be successful in life, you have to have this thick skin, right? If you take a big company like, for example, Apple or Microsoft, right? The CEOs, they have like so much negativity that they have to deal with every single day. They launched a new iPhone and like, oh, this is shit and that is shit. And like, here's a YouTube video and here's the mistake and blah, blah. So whatever they do, right? Even if they build an amazing phone, they still get Like there's a small mistake or a small thing that is bad, like this is bad, like, and people will like focus so much on this one little thing that is wrong. It is normal. And if you take a look at the most successful people in this world, for example, Elon Musk, also he gets a lot of bad feedback or trolls or people, calling him out. So I think if you decide to put yourself out there, to put your life online, you have people who just try to make you insecure, who will just be bad and spread negativity. I have the same example from my life. I started recently to put out more and more content about live poker because I'm a mindset and performance coach, of course, but I love psychology. And when I started building my first business, it was a dating and relationship coaching. So one of the things that I learned very early was to focus a lot on body language, because sometimes I went with my clients on dates or I coached couples, and you could read a lot into it by just their body language. For example, if you go to a restaurant, just take a look at the table next to you. You see a couple, if they hold hands and they're like, oh my God, I love you so much. Or other couples, they're like with the phone like this, like, don't talk a word. You see, right, how good the relationship quality is. Yeah, of course, it's not perfect. You just see a fraction of the relationship, but it's an indicator. So I learned very early in my journey to really focus and read into body language. And once I started doing this with my clients, they were mind blown. They're like, holy shit, Ben, how can you see all those tells? I'm like, oh, it's not so obvious for you? I'm like, no, man. And then I posted it on social media and some people love it. Some of my reels have over 1 million views. Yeah, 100K views, 1 million views. Some people love it and they share it. And of course, that's awesome to know, because it's one of my biggest passions, psychology, body language, reading people. So I can now combine my passion plus my job, which is also amazing for me. Yeah? So I love psychology, I love mindset, and I combine those two. And even though a lot of people like it, there's still people in the comments who are like, oh, if I would see the cards, of course I would read this tell as well, right? And stuff like that. And I get this all the time. And of course, I understand those people. If I take a look at their Instagram profile, for example, I see that, yeah, they are not professional poker players most of the time. So maybe there's a reason why. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe there's a reason why.
the thing about thick skin, and I feel like this is always the best example. If you're not the one involved in needing a thick skin, it's always easier to say like, oh, you should have a thicker skin. And the best example is Zinedine Zidane. He headbutted the Italian player, and it's like everybody is watching. It's like, why would you do that? Like just be like still for the rest of the game, and then like do the penalty shootouts. Here's the thing. Let's put one of you guys on the field, and then let's have that guy that was cursing out Zidane's mother and sister to your face. And then let's see how you react. Because I guarantee you that so many people, they will punch that fool, or like, they probably won't headbutt him like Zidane did. That was actually bizarre, but there will be some violence, and like some people will at least tell him to shut up. Maybe they'll get a red card as well. So it's easier, when you're watching a confrontation to be like, oh, I would have handled it this way. It's easy to say. It's easy to say, like, I would run into the house on fire to save that person. Many people think that they would do that, but then you're in the moment and, maybe it's different, right?
That's true. But I think if you decide to become a streamer, you have to also understand that that's a possibility and you have to be prepared for all outcomes. Coming back to you as a commentator, because that's also something that was very interesting. You commentate a lot of esport games, and I think you also have to have a certain quality or skill set to be a good commentator, to engage an audience, to be entertaining, to be fun, to share interesting things, to keep the attention span high. Because a lot of people, when they start to talk, people fade away. So how did you learn this skill set? Because I think it's also relevant for streaming. And what would you recommend someone who needs to be a little bit more entertaining or a little bit more fun?
So initially, when I started doing commentary, it was as an analyst. So there wasn't really much to it other than I was a pro player. Somebody asked me to go to a tournament and be on a kind of like they do, in Sports Center. They'll have the host, somebody who's doing like commentating the exciting action, and then they'll have ex-pro players usually be the guy to kind of break down the action because they just understand the game like super well and play at a high level. So that was what I initially did, but I enjoyed it much more than I thought I would. And then I was like, I want to give a real shot to proper commentary. So even when I moved into commentary, it was still kind of like that. And very often I would still be paired with someone that was more focused on play-by-play. I just always try to evolve and get better, like no matter what I do. And that's kind of what happened with commentary. I tried to look at other things that were, I thought, important. And now I've reached a point where whenever I commentate something, I'll try to always ask myself all the time, what should I be bringing to the commentary right now? If and there is a balance because usually you're not commentating by yourself. So maybe my co-commentator is the one doing a lot of breaking down the action and really going deep into the analysis. Then I shouldn't be doing analysis as well. That's boring. We're both doing the same thing. Then maybe I need to announce and be excited. Maybe I need to crack jokes. Like sometimes you'll have a good balance of somebody breaking down the action and somebody doing play by play, but then you have zero jokes. It's like just way too serious. So that's also one that's I think is very important is to bring some jokes and banter to the commentary. And in my opinion, the perfect commentary is the perfect blend of all of this together. It's just kind of the way I evolved with it. And fortunately for me, I mean, I always played video games and I played two of them at fairly high level. So that helped a lot when doing commentary.
It's basically self-awareness, right? So you want to understand what does the audience need, what does the stream look like for a viewer, and then based on that, you add a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I liked it. I liked it. And that also shows how advanced you are when it comes to commentating or streaming or whatever it is, because you really understand what the viewer needs. And it's quite similar also to Mr. Beast, because I also watched a lot of interviews from him. And he says if he films a video, his special ability, his sixth sense, if you will, is to really understand how a video looks like at the end when it's edited and when the attention span drops. So whenever it drops, he adds something else or something cool or an effect, or he cuts it a little bit different to keep the attention span high. And we all know Mr. Beast and how famous he became on different platforms. That is something that is really unique. And I think if you understand this on a high level, that's when you gain thousands of followers on platforms and people really like to watch you. Two more questions before I let you go. The first one is mindset related. When you take a look at, for example, esports or also poker, I think those things, they have a lot in common. You sometimes have certain setbacks, bad beats or downswings. Sometimes in esports, you have phases where you just lose and you feel like nothing really works, or in poker as well. And of course, it gets even more crucial when people watch you, when they watch you on stream and they just see you lose all the time. How do you deal with the pressure you put on yourself, or that extra pressure you get from streaming? And how do you maintain a strong mindset at the end? Because getting out of a downswing is not easy, but I think I can imagine it's even harder if people watch you every single day.
Yeah, I think, for gaming, there is not much pressure because in Warcraft 3, I'm like pretty good. So usually I won't struggle too much. And also I'm like streaming more casually nowadays. So I'm not competing in tournaments. I'm doing pretty well. Usually in the games that I'm in, I have like a very high win rate. So that's not so stressful, I would say. But yeah, in poker, then it can be in regards to that, because obviously like, everybody has like, we run bads. Our brains are wired in a way where they're going to convince us that we're the unluckiest person in the world. That's for literally everybody. Outside of playing, I think anybody can do work. I wouldn't even say meditating, but just kind of thinking about it, for example, and just reminding yourself of the big picture. I think that's the very important one in poker. Is like if you're taking the game even semi-seriously, maybe even recreationally, just remember the big picture. Like, yes, you're going to lose some pots. Yes, you're going to run bad. Maybe you're going to be a bunch of buy-ins under EV. But then when you turn, 50 or 60, are you even going to remember that moment you just had like a couple bad hands? Like in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing, right? In the amount of hands that you will play in your life if you play consistently. So that's one of the things that I evolved myself a lot in. I think initially when I started playing poker, I was very bad with I had like a lot of like tilt initially. Then I kind of got rid of that. Then I had a lot of soft tilt where like if I'm down, I obsess a bit too much over it. Then I start, calling 3 bets wider and really trying to break even. And then I've worked very hard. Like there's many steps you can take. I don't check my balance or try to think too much about whether I'm up or down during a session. Like some people maybe will have no problem checking it and be like, yeah, I'm still playing my game. But I feel like for me, it might still maybe bother me. So the way I found to deal with it is just because I play cash game mostly, I don't check. I just play, and then ideally for as long as I feel good, but very often for too long probably. I think that's helped me deal better with, like if I'm losing, starting to play worse and things like that. In the past, I definitely had some issues with this. Sometimes it still happened, but like, like I guess like forgive yourself, try to move on. And also in Vegas, like I went to Vegas in the last 5 years, probably around like 10 times. So like one or two trips a year usually. I play 1-3, which is the lowest that you can play. Every single biggest spot I've played, I've lost. And every time like some completely BS hands, like just insane. I lost the 75-25 for 800 big blind all in pre-flop. And then it's like, you just look at it and you're like, maybe that was like half my profit for the trip here in the month, like that I just lost. And it's like, what is this? But I remember, because I was playing at the Win and I was staying like on the complete other side of the strip. So I was like, I'm not even going to Uber. I'm just going to walk home and reflect. And for some reason, I just accepted this beat so well. And I was just like, this is nothing. I'm like a week into my 1 month trip. I'm just going to be back tomorrow playing really well. Like if I felt like I would have needed a break, probably I think I would have had the discipline to actually take it that time. But no, I didn't even feel like that. And I came back the next day and I played amazing and I won quite a bit. I didn't win quite 800 big blinds, 800 big blind pot that I lost that day, but I played amazing and I had one of my best sessions. So sometimes the work that you can do yourself like that, just, thinking about it and thinking big picture. For some people, mentoring, I'm sure will help them a lot, or like talking to friends. Everybody has their own way to go about it. Like for me, I think I'm good kind of thinking about this myself or talking to friends. And yeah, sometimes I handle it better, sometimes worse. Lately, I do feel like I've taken good steps towards being better. I still punt every once in a while, but then I don't lose sleep over it. Like I had a session 2 days ago where I punted a couple stacks, here and there. Like I'm not sure about like theory, and maybe there was one that was like complete punt where it's like it's just terrible play. But I'm back here today, and today I played like really solid. I felt good. I woke up earlier and stuff like that, so I felt like it was important to play. So yeah, just always try to improve every day.
And the final question I have for you is, do you want to share anything? Of course, I will link down your Twitch channel down below, but is there something you want to share, something where people get in touch with you, or something that you really want to mention before I let you go?
No, like shout out to anyone that enjoys Warcraft 3 and poker, and just being grateful in life. It's a good way to go about living, especially it's kind of troubling time nowadays. So I try to focus on the positivity, but I guess it's contrasting because obviously on my stream I'm also a little bit specific and like I don't know what's the right word, but yeah, not everybody necessarily thinks that I'm like the most positive person. I do feel like in video games they kind of bring the worst side of me. So you hear me curse out like my opponents and stuff when I'm playing some not so nice stuff, but I feel like outside of that, nowadays I'm very happy with how I am in general and just friendly. Like I mean, I have good interactions with you, and I'm sure we're gonna have lunch sometime if you want to. So
For sure. For
you'll
sure.
see. You'll see for yourself. So yeah, thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure talking to you.